Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have Man in Space. This is an episode from 1955 of the Magical World of Disney. Now, this thing aired in March, I think. March 20th, I think? And March 9th, 1955. So we're a little, not even, Disneyland isn't even open yet. And you have to understand that the beginning of every Magical World of Disney episode talks about the different lands that you're visiting while watching this show, and each week there's a new episode that it visits Frontierland, Adventureland, Fantasyland, Tomorrowland, and well, in this case, of course, it's Tomorrowland, and it's kind of astounding. This is 1955. The first man in space is Russian in April of 1961, and then the first American in space a month later, not a little less than a month later. So we're not even in space yet, and you have to kind of think that this is some pretty fast work. Yes, a lot of this stuff has already been worked on by the time they start talking about this and showing this to anybody who happens to have a television. You notice this is in color. Anybody who had a television in 1955 did not have a color television that I'm aware of, unless there's some some rich person out there who's just like, hey, you know what? They're broadcasting in color. Everybody else just gets black and white. I really doubt that's the case. And most of the time, anybody who had a TV, they were not common. It was on a screen barely this big, you know, and with all these transistors inside of it, this big box, small screen, black and white, tinny sound. Uh, Even I watched television in black and white when I was a kid, and I'm not that old. But 1955, uh, you have to understand how wondrous this has to be. Introduced, by the way, by Walt Disney himself, because it's the magical world of Disney, and he's the one who starts off this little episode, like every episode, and then he hands it over to these guys who tell us all about how the idea of sending a man into space or riding a rocket is not a new idea. It's been around for a very long time. In fact, a number of centuries, and using rockets for propulsion goes back to China, at least used in battles, using rockets to fight each other. At least that's how it's animated, in kind of in a racist way, but we'll not bother with that. But the the footage that they show us, again, there's no real footage because nobody's gone into space. There's just cartoon artistic depictions. I, I think it was Ub Iwerks might have contributed to the artwork, or the main contributor, or the only contributor. I'm not sure, but his name is in the credits. But to watch this, you know how, I don't know if you've been to Disneyland, but uh, you have to understand, in 1955, when Disneyland opened, that was a depiction of the future, walking into a world that looked like this could be what the future is like. Smooth white rockets everywhere, and futuristic lights and dinglebats and whatever the stuff that is that the future seems to be. Now it's just retro. It's very not the future. It's very much the past. At least our depiction. It's the World's Fair, 1964 kind of thing. 64, 46, one of those. 64. Anyway, in watching their descriptions of what the rockets do, some of it's a little dry. Some of it's too much like a science lesson in high school or junior high, and it's not incredibly interesting unless you are a kid slapped in front of that television just learning about spacemen for the first time. Not space healthcare, but space science, space health is a thing. They're treating it, of course, that it would be something that we'd be doing a lot of, and yes, we are still sending men and women into space, but it's not as common as they kind of depict it to be. They did get a lot of things right in how, at least at the very beginning, rocket launches and the different stages, how things break away. There's a point where they're discussing this one man with a heavy German accent. Wonder where they got him. Discussing, explaining to the artists, the Disney artists, how they would depict these things, explaining how a rocket would go into space, what would happen to it, and why would it be there. They're literally discussing satellites. They're literally discussing the idea of putting a satellite into orbit, which had not existed at that point. As far as I can tell from this conversation, maybe there was, but at this point, the idea of a machine just orbiting around the planet, it's not flat, orbiting around the planet was a new thing. We didn't have space garbage yet. Now there's tons of it. We have tons of electronic space garbage floating around in space. Some of it falls to Earth sometimes, but for the most part, it's staying up there. You can watch these men discuss the concept, the idea of putting a satellite into space, not even thinking about how many we would have in the future. Some of the things they didn't get right, the idea of how we would land the rockets, where it would adjust slightly, come in normally, and then they would land it like a plane. Now, that did eventually happen with the space shuttles, the space shuttle program. That was how it happened, but certainly not in the 60s. Certainly not the 50s. Well, certainly not the 60s or 70s. The shuttles program, I don't recall when that exactly started. I can only think of the 80s because the tragedies that were involved. And yeah, but this is immensely interesting to me. This is from 1955, as I said. It's 49 minutes long. If you want to see a bit of history, and if you're a fan of like classic animation, just this animation has been people have tried to reproduce it, that style, to look retro and kind of. This is the real stuff. This is the original stuff, and people can mimic it all they want to create a certain sense or a feel of that era, but nothing beats the original. So look into their minds by watching these animations. There's one part of animation as they are discussing what a spaceman would be like. I don't even think they use the word astronaut at all yet. But the idea of what a spaceman would have to do to become a spaceman, he'd be a different being altogether. Like he'd be Homo sapien extraterrestrial or something like that. It's like they're treating him as a completely different level of human. That's kind of crazy. I mean, yeah, you need to have. I don't think they had an idea, but they didn't fully have an idea of what a man's body goes through going into space, and why. They didn't even have the thought of Star Trek yet. Yeah, I think Flash Gordon was around. The idea of rocket ships and everything else existed, but yeah, it's we're still not there yet. But this is an amazing look at a time when we were still really discovering. We're still discovering. We're still innovating. We're still changing. We're sending billionaires into penis rockets into space, or almost space, for no reason except for a measuring contest. For the most part, yes, some of them have the work they do in order to get these things up there have contributed to science that will make space travel and exploration more possible, but for the most part, I think they're just doing it for vanity. That's just my opinion. Come and tell me different, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. But to talk to me, I have $1 million fee from you guys only. Each. Or, we can negotiate. Either way, this is, like I said, this is something worth checking out if you love classic animation, early Disney animation in a different kind of way. It's humorous at times. It's a little dry at times. but there's no greater sense of wonder I think you can find in a scientifically based show. Yeah, there's live action stuff here where there's just guys with German accents speaking about things, but yeah, most of it is animated, and there's a few different styles involved, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of really cool if you're into that kind of thing. I'm into that kind of thing. The look of the retro, the look of the science, the talk about what the future holds. Yeah, it has come true. They talk about putting a man on the moon and the conquest of space. Conquest of space. They say that a lot. Like, we are going to be the masters of space. We ain't close, but we're getting there slowly. You got to take care of Earth first. All right, let's take care of Earth first and its people. But yeah, good times. Highly recommend. Watch it. So, the kids might be bored, but if you're an old school Disney person, you'll appreciate it. So, anyway, let's pick tomorrow's episode.
219.
219. Notice that 321 that we had yesterday led to a man in space, like 321, liftoff rocket. That's pretty cool. 219 is what we want for tomorrow. Man, I think we're getting... Okay. Could have used a short right about now. It's just we've had a lot of movies, and this is another movie, but I don't know what this is. I've never heard of it, and I haven't seen it in any of my searches. So if this doesn't actually pop up, I'm going to be back to pick another one. We just missed Hannah Montana, which honestly I am surprised we've gone almost 2 years now and have not had a single Hannah Montana moment. Not a single one. But we're going to watch Hatching Pete. Hatching Pete feels like it's a Disney original movie. I don't know why. Feels like there's a junior high kid in trouble. He's being bullied for something. Maybe he's a chicken. I don't know. Hatching Pete on the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow.